So this morning, I'm going to be talking about Agni Yoga and thought, Agni Yoga and thinking. How many times have you in the past found yourself in a continual thinking loop and unable to get out of it? These thoughts may be driven by fear, anger, worry. I think we can all relate to that. But this is something a little bit different. The talk this morning, I'm hoping will inspire us all to realize that this loop of thinking that we find ourselves caught in only keeps us perpetuating our worries, perpetuating our fears, perpetuating our anger or our feelings of self-doubt and all those things that seem to go against the true self. Agni Yoga tells us that, in fact, we need to learn how to think. So this loopy process, can we call this as a loopy process, is not thinking, even though we may think it is. In a sense, it is thinking, but it's not thinking according to what the masters are trying to inspire us to strive toward. Or they wouldn't be telling us that we need to learn how to think. So today, we're going to learn how to think. Well, at least this is the 101 of learning how to think. And actually, I don't find it necessarily easy. Some of the ideas are so lofty in concept that it may lose you. But on the other hand, we need to challenge ourselves. If we only attend lectures where the presenter tells us what we already know, that's simply inflating our ego and reaffirming, our sense of limitations. Sometimes people don't like to be challenged to think beyond their present, stage of knowledge. So be open with me on the talk this morning, and try to stay with me. I encourage those that are listening to us through the webinar to ask your questions. And if you are not ready to ask a question now, you can ask questions later through email, our beloved email. And then just give me a day to answer it. Thinking, as we refine and deepen our thinking, our thoughts are going to channel more psychic energy. So, to channel more psychic energy, we must deepen our thinking. The next point is we must refine our thinking. Eventually, a moment is going to come when all of our thoughts act as psychic energy. This means that our thoughts can be used in the highest form of creativity. Now, this is very interesting. If you're an artist, what I'm about to say, if you're an artist or if you're a musician, a poet, you're going to recognize and understand that thoughts have special colors. Thoughts have special colors. And thoughts have a particular formation of flow. It is easy for artists and for musicians to understand that, because even though psychically they may not be able to see the colors of a thought form, they're going to feel it. And they're certainly going to feel and sense the currents of those thoughts. See, those thoughts are what the composer or the artist permeated their work of genius, their work of talent, or that object they put their talent and their whole beingness into. So as we look at a painting, if we're sensitive enough, and that artist was lofty enough in his or her talent, they're going to permeate that canvas or that manuscript with psychic energy. So as we look at the painting, as we listen to the music, as we perform the music, or create a poem around our inspiration, we are picking up and carrying on and multiplying that psychic energy that the initial talent or genius infused in that object. This is why such thoughts that are used in the highest form of creativity permeates space and our environment with psychic energy. Thoughts which last long and shine with very pleasant colors and hues is the result of the consciousness of a spiritual being functioning in the higher mental plane and in the spiritual triad. They have an abundance, that person or that group or that country, that nation, has an abundance of psychic energy. I was thinking about the political environment as it leads up to the election in this country, and how people, they do not understand. They believe that the more money they have, the more likelihood they'll be elected. And the country has become so adapted to that way of thinking, they're limiting their vision and they are cutting off their ability to hear, their ears, to really respond to this psychic energy. You look at the candidates today. Who carries this psychic energy? That's who you want to vote for. Not who raised the most millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to get elected, but the one who carries the most psychic energy. If they have beautiful thoughts, they can form a symphony of colors of rare beauty in which the colors coming from their thought forms flow in various configurations. So, for example, we know psychic energy heals. Psychic energy builds. Psychic energy creates. Right? So we're not saying super PAC money builds. We're not saying super PAC money heals. We're saying psychic energy does these things. So, if we can just imagine thoughts, thought forms in the formation of musical notes, this might be a little easier to visualize, just to, see the air permeated with musical notes that have color and sound and psychic energy. What's going to happen? We are going to, as an individual, as a group, as a nation, as a globe, be infused with vision. See, when we're in that loop of worry and fear and concern and anger and so forth. There's no way these beautiful colors and sounds and forming these beautiful formations of thought and idea, there's no way anything can reach us because we are in such a tight loop of fear and worry. So if we can imagine these notes forming a symphony which comes into being when the human spirit creates thoughts on the level of high achievements, then we know as we begin to strive toward higher thinking, we are going to give and to share, or they are going to give and share with us higher vision, revelation. They're going to inspire us to strive and to increase our purity of thought and beingness and livingness. So we can understand psychic energy then as life-giving. Psychic energy is life-giving energy. It is the energy of one's spiritual nature. It is the energy of life, the life-giving energy. This is psychic energy. It is this psychic energy is either going to increase or it's going to decrease. When psychic energy disappears, what happens? Disintegration. This is why we want to put into a leadership role only those who have psychic energy. Psychic energy will perpetuate the life of the nation, the life of the family, the life of the group. This past week we've been talking a little bit about psychic energy, and last Sunday and the previous Sunday as well. And we learned that psychic energy can be given to us by invisible forces. To increase our creativity and energy. They're going to increase our creativity and energy if we use this energy for service, to create right human relations, to inspire others with vision. As we deepen our thoughts, our thoughts begin to channel more psychic energy. Do you see now how that works? Do you understand what deepening our thoughts means? Then these deepening thoughts can be used in the highest forms of creativity. Thought is a fiery substance. It affects the object. The object would be like the walls in your home, the walls in the sanctuary, our pencil, our pen, our friends. It affects the object upon which the energy is focused. So this effect can be either beneficial or harmful, right? Okay, so thought is energy. It can be directed and charged by our psychic energy, and it can heal, it can purify, it can shield, and it can transform all objects around us. But when the current of thought suffers from ugly interruptions, that current is interrupted, then what happens is that a mixture of dark thoughts comes into the current, and psychic energy departs. It departs from the current, and the current will then serve evil by becoming selfish, destructive, harmful, and by becoming a polluter of space. You see, this is how it's getting a little bit heavy now, because it's showing our responsibility. You know, the talk is demonstrating the responsibility we have for our thoughts. Thought forms without psychic energy degenerates and leaves behind contaminated dross. Meditation. You know I was going to bring meditation in. Meditation is a process that charges our thoughts with psychic energy. So, if you're not a meditator, really think about this. If you say, you know, I can't meditate, my brain is going 1,000 miles a minute, or, you know, I'm just too busy, I just really don't have time to meditate. Rethink your thinking. Rethink your thinking, because we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by meditating. And if you don't want to engage in a meditation course, then take 5 or 10 minutes every morning. You can, I was sharing this with a young woman the other day about sit yourself in front of the Nicholas Roerich painting, The Mother of the World. Or you can look at these two paintings here, these copies of Nicholas Roerich's work, and you have St. Sergius over here. And all the symbolism in this painting, and if you look very, very closely at the top of the painting, you're going to see an eye, which is also part of the symbolism of White Mountain. You can sit yourself in front of this painting or in front of the Mother of the World just for 5 or 10 minutes, and you're going to see a transformation taking place in your consciousness, in your whole beingness, in the way you live your life. Just do this every day for 5 or 10 minutes for 6 months, and note the changes at the end of 6 months that took place. Those who meditate keep the process of their thoughts in tune with the plan of humanity given to us by the Lords of Shambhala. Meditation adds to our thoughts the energy of heart. The energy of heart. And such thoughts become the best carriers of psychic energy. So it's more than just the mind. Now this is interesting. Here's an idea about bliss. Do you know that bliss is the highest manifestation of psychic energy? I imagine all of you, perhaps most of you, are thinking like I did, and that is Joseph Campbell saying, follow your bliss. And I'd always wondered, isn't that selfish to follow your bliss? But now I get it. If we define bliss as the highest substance of psychic energy, think what that will mean for us. Of course, happiness and joy are also manifestations of psychic energy, but bliss carries the highest substance of psychic energy. It is the highest. It is one of the rarest substances, and it charges and energizes and heals and uplifts and transforms in the highest degree. So we have happiness, and then we have joy, and then we have bliss. Because bliss is of such a rare substance and is the highest manifestation of psychic energy, people who are not ready for it can be burned by it if it touches them. And the reason being is the aura cannot yet assimilate it. Joy is easier to transmit or to assimilate. So this may be a little new piece of information, for you. This is the reason that we are told in the beginning years not to meditate for longer than 5 or 10 minutes. Because as the psychic energy increases in your nature, you must give yourself time to undergo the process of change, the process of transformation. Because ultimately, you will undergo the process of transfiguration. As you are undergoing the process of transfiguration, alongside of that transfiguring energy, you will find bliss. You want your countenance countenance to be able to assimilate and use bliss and not burn out your system. Right? Okay. It is bliss that is the most fiery. As we receive it, or people receive it, they will experience a great expansion of consciousness and contact with higher realities. We read in the teaching that the lack of psychic energy in the blood generates cancer. Some teachers develop cancer because they exhaust their psychic energy in spiritual service. This is why every teacher, every server must be careful not to go beyond his or her capacity. Diseases attack teachers in moments of exhaustion. This is why in our office, sometimes I'll tell them, go home. And they argue with me, no, I have all this work I must do. But they should listen, because they're exhausting their psychic energy. And when we exhaust our psychic energy, we become ill. That's just the way it works. Now, there is a cure. And the cure is to get closer to hierarchy. Get closer to hierarchy. The hierarchy often recharges a servant with psychic energy, which is then used to heal the cancer. For example, there was a person who had cancer. One day, a healer came to him, seemingly from nowhere, and healed him with his psychic energy. So it is possible. The hierarchy has agents who are used to carry psychic energy to certain servers if their time is not up. The psychic energy of the hierarchy can be received only through the spirit of striving toward the hierarchy. It is the striving that creates proper conditions. It is the striving that creates proper conditions for the reception of psychic energy. Hierarchy is an abundant source of psychic energy. So continuous contact with that psychic energy keeps you continuously charged with it. See, thus meditation, thus serving, thus deepening your thought process. Psychic energy is devoured by doubt and by disloyalty. You can see people occupied disloyalty and caught in the web of doubt toward their teacher and toward hierarchy. Even they doubt their own inner divinity. Immediately, when one is caught in doubt, all his psychic lamps begin to dim and finally turn off. And when this happens, the person sinks into depression and into darkness. Disloyalty, oftentimes called treason, does the same thing. It devours the psychic energy and leaves all of your vehicles unprotected and open for dark attacks. So as pretty much with anything, even psychic energy can be polluted and used for destructive purposes. This occurs when a person who is gifted with psychic energy, this is much like what Richard was reading in the poem this morning. When a person is gifted with psychic energy and begins to think along the lines of unrighteousness and ugliness and possessiveness and evil and crime, and uses his precious energy to drive his degenerated thinking. But fortunately, this does not go on for long, because misused psychic energy either destroys the mechanism of the person or withdraws, leaving the person in a devastated state. If pollution of the psychic energy is possible, so is the purification of it. Purification of psychic energy takes place when his thinking process and his thoughts, charges them with beauty. If you charge your thoughts with the principles of the teaching, you will regenerate yourself. The purification of psychic energy also takes place when you begin to use your heart. That may be a surprise to so many people, but it shouldn't be. And no longer will it be. Compassion is also how purification of psychic energy takes place, and intuition. Begin to build and use your intuition. It can also take place when you begin to improve the quality of your work, your service, and your labor. See, this is striving. Improving the quality of your work and your labor and your service. In the teaching, we are told to build the bridge between our world and the fiery world. There are two very important steps which we must take. The first is to build or to fill our actions, our thoughts, and so forth with beauty. The second is to harmonize the currents of our spirit, of our spark, of our divinity. With the heart. So we're trying to harmonize these currents with spirit and with heart. The currents of psychic energy. Am I being clear here? Okay, good. The aspirations, the desires, and the striving of the heart must be in harmony with the vision of our spirit. So if you come into this life with a vision, or you're given a vision in the middle of your life, or you are with a group that has a vision, then we are challenged to harmonize our spirit, our heart, with the currents of that vision, because that vision is radiating the currents of psychic energy. If we challenge, if we go against, if we doubt that vision, then that psychic energy becomes polluted. The spirit must always be focused with the will of the great cosmic fire. The currents of spirit, the currents of our divinity, are directed to the central magnet, that cosmic magnet. The currents of the heart, of your heart, our heart, the group's heart, the nation's heart, may flow in every possible direction, but if these currents are shifted and polarized toward the direction of the currents of the spirit and harmonized with them, then the communication of the higher worlds starts. And the heart begins to sense the beauty of the higher spheres. So I was saying this, might be a little challenging, but it will start working on you, and you're going to start thinking about it, and it will start making sense. As the harmonization proceeds, a clear awareness of the higher worlds is going to dawn upon your heart. It is this increasing awareness of the heart that gradually then passes into your intellect and mind. And there the awareness becomes translated into a precious level of knowledge and information. So the heart and mind must work together to understand the contact with the higher planes of consciousness, the higher spheres of existence. Fiery thoughts must be used to purify space. As the astronauts have witnessed from space, and we know this because we have all seen so many pictures, there is a thick sphere of various chemical elements around the Earth, around the planet, thrown into space by factories created by today's science. The accumulation of these elements are going to decide the future of humanity. Parallel to this poisonous sphere is the dark sphere of human-based thoughts, which is a decisive influence on the events of the world. Each fiery thought can penetrate into the strata of thoughts and like a beam of light disperse a certain amount of dark accumulation and draw an electrical charge from higher spheres. This is why this new group of World Servers Week coming up in December of this year is so vitally important. If groups of people can release lofty thoughts, eventually it will be possible to disperse the dark sphere of ugly thoughts and evoke an electrical stream which may disperse all chemical accumulation around the world, around the planet, around the earth. The heart energy heals, illuminates, uplifts, releases, gives peace and harmonization. We are told to guard our hearts from childhood, to protect the sparks of fire, and to create conditions in which these fires will grow and build the rainbow of glory and unity with higher sources of inspiration. When your heart is charged with psychic energy, people will feel its presence in your handshake, in your eye contact. But those who do not have psychic energy, they're going to draw energy from you through that handshake, and their eyes will be empty, seem empty. The spark in the eyes indicates the energy of the heart. It can be noticed that sometimes this heart energy vanishes due to slander and malice and egotism and vanity and ingratitude. This is a very dangerous situation to put yourself in, because once it happens, then you will be in danger of obsession or possession. This is why the ancients used to say, beware of hearts that have lost their fire. The heart turns into an abyss of malignant thoughts and a well of betrayal. When the fire and energy of the heart leaves someone, the solar angel of that person can no longer guide his or her steps. This is why such people feel extremely lonely for a while until that obsession takes place. It's a very powerful statement. This is why such people feel extremely lonely for a while until the obsession takes place. The communication of the solar angel with the human soul takes place through the substance of psychic energy that exists in your heart. The more psychic energy there is, the clearer will be the contact. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Oh my gosh, this is too funny. I looked at this piece of paper. Look at these life insurance rates. They should be listening to today's talk. Were there any questions?
One of those almost very last statements that you just made, one of them left me puzzled. When you say, until.
Right, because there's a gap. What happens is when the psychic energy has left the person, there is a period of time where he feels lonely or she's lonely. Okay, that's the period of time prior to an obsessing entity or obsessing idea comes into the consciousness of the individual. Okay, Valerie, did you have a question?
It was
on the same line.
So when the person has this deep loneliness, a lot of times they'll turn to drugs, alcohol, or something else to relieve that loneliness.
Right.
So then there's also the chance of possession.
Is that your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not only obsessed, but then.
You know, to really consider possession is so bizarre in concept. And even psychology today, doesn't really get into possession. So if we use the word obsession, we can, there's a whole wonderful book on obsession and possession by Torkim that you can read and study. And we're so out of time this morning, I don't really have, enough time to get into it, but we can in the future. But sure, it can begin with obsessive thoughts. See, thoughts that are dark, thoughts that are selfish, thoughts that are self-centered. Then it is these kind of thoughts that draws the darkness to the individual and brings the obsession in. So pretty soon, like you're saying, that they replace their loneliness with alcohol, with wine, with Jim Beam. Okay, trying to think of names here, and difficult behaviors. Okay. Okay, so now we know about the importance of deepening our thoughts, refining our thoughts, and how psychic energy plays a role in that.